Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin. Yes, I am back. Candy Ebling did an incredible job holding down the fort last week while I was out there on a bizarre drive from Michigan to Fort Lauderdale, taking a restaurant marketing truck. And I landed in a restaurant out in Kentucky. Still popped in to see how my peeps were doing. But yes, it was a different look with Candy's a whole lot prettier than me with this old beard that I have, but whatever. You can definitely see the cosmetic appearance between the two. She's a whole lot prettier than I am, and I'm just pretty loud and pretty energetic to be reunited with my crew and adding yet another one to the fray. With that said, I want to introduce a new guest tonight, Carrie Johnson. She's a Chiefs girl, obviously, chick, whatever you want to call her. But anyway, welcome to the big show, Carrie. Glad to have you with us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I look forward to having fun tonight.
Oh yeah, don't worry. We there's anything. I'm anything but boring. It just depends on how high octane I am, and I'm high octane today. Let me tell you.
Oh, yay!
I didn't trademark the Motor City Mile Mouth, otherwise it gets expensive. Mad Mouth is already in the books by the government. So with that said, we'll bring on the other half of the three chicks in a pod crew, which is where Carrie is one of them. The other one, Jennifer, she went back to Canada for a while, so she's going to be out of sight, out of the country, and out of whatever. Okay, Candy, welcome back.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome back to yourself.
Oh, why, thank you. Don't worry. I got a lot of activity coming on while I have a couple of slow weeks here and there. And of course, when you come to the club, you have Mel Farr Jr. back. Welcome back, Mr. Farr.
Hey, it's great to be back.
And my right-hand man, Steve Ballesteri. He's back for Patriots. I missed you, Steve. You know how that is, my friend.
Yeah, it was fun last week with Candy. It was going so well. I thought we were going to name it the Pigskin Podcast, hosted by Candy Ebling.
Yeah, well, like I said, as one of my friends, Robert Everett, said here, we're trying to build a legacy. Oh, Candy knows that. Yeah, hey, listen, I got news for you. Candy can step in anytime, and she's done a lot of good stuff with Three Chicks in a Pod, Chicks and Salsa, whatever else she's got over there, and she does an outstanding job filling up the me. Sometimes it's never easy for me because I do have to take care of business on the road, whether it's go to a game or whether it's take care of other special projects. But the thing I feel very good about is the fact that Candy fills in very capably, and we don't miss a beat here on the show. So I'm very fortunate that she takes an interest in what we do with her ability to put content on the website and do broadcasting and photography and so forth. So to tell you this show is loaded would be mildly stating the obvious, but it is. So strap in here and bear with us because we're going to hammer you with a lot of information and insights. And get ready for an interesting ride tonight. So we're going to start off with the fact that ESPN's decision to have Jacksonville versus Denver on ESPN Plus, to me, I couldn't find. I don't have a problem with streaming a broadcast, but don't stream the London game. The NFL made a bad move by going ahead and streaming that game. They really did. I understand Amazon Prime. I get that, but don't stream the London game. I know it is the way to go, but not in this case. As it turns out, Denver defeated Jacksonville 21-7. I didn't have to worry about it that day because with everything that went on over the week, I slept till 10:30. But for the average fan out there that doesn't have ESPN Plus, well, didn't find it, so you had to rely on the NFL Network. So you know what, Carrie? What are your thoughts about the last Sunday's game between Jacksonville and Denver being streamed?
I understand that the streaming is the next best thing. It's the next thing. I'm going to tell you that I am not fond yet of Amazon Prime streaming it. Chiefs were the first game that had the stream, the launch of Amazon Prime, and it bit big time, especially in rural areas where I live. The bandwidth, we don't have that T1 or that real high-speed internet. We have good internet. It's not the same as when you're going into the larger metropolitan areas. So we got shortchanged on that. I joked, and would have been easier to watch it on an Etch-a-Sketch. Now, as far as the game this Sunday, I feel like that they missed out on gaining market because you have two teams that are not performing very well. So why would you put them on on your streaming because you're not going to gain followers that way. It was uninteresting, so I didn't even log in to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, like I reiterated moments ago, you know what? Streaming is inevitable. It really is. We all know what's coming up. We know what's going on Thursday night. But a Sunday game in London, when you're trying to market it overseas, to me, I understand what they're doing. I just don't feel that in this case it was something they needed to do. I always look forward to the London game all the time, and obviously we didn't get a chance to see it. So you know what? Let's talk to a guy that certainly is familiar with going overseas, Steve, and tell me what are your thoughts about the fact that the Jacksonville-Denver game was on ESPN Plus. Do you think it was appropriate, or do you think it was something that they could have, to me, they could have done without this time?
Yeah, that game didn't belong on streaming. One, it's one of the London games. You're
Right.
trying to promote your product. Put it out where more people can see it.
Right.
The people in England, in Europe, really are crazy about American football. I mean, the site that I write for, we have a ton of English fans, and they're dedicated when they stay up for a night game. When it's 8:20 here, it's like 1:20 in the morning over there, and they're staying up to watch the entire game. That's dedication. They have great fans over there. The NFL should be promoting that and not putting, to begin with, it wasn't a great matchup anyway. It's not like, when a couple of weeks ago, the Bills and the Chiefs were playing. I would understand if you put that on streaming, but to put that game on streaming coming from London, I thought was a huge mistake.
Yeah, ESPN Plus, I don't subscribe to that. I don't. There's only so much in my wallet that I'm willing to subscribe. I'm not on the ESPN Plus bandwagon anyway, so to put it there of all places, again, I got lucky. I was driving, and I'm king of the road, so sleeping till 10:30 didn't make any difference to me anyhow. And then I had to transition over to the Lions-Dolphins game, which I didn't have to leave the house because they had it on local TV. All right, Queen Diabling, tell me your thoughts about the fact that we didn't have a chance to watch the Jacksonville game. But the idea of it being on ESPN Plus, you think it was a mistake, or do you think that was the right call by the NFL to put it there anyways?
So let's put it into a little perspective. Back in March of 2021, the NFL announced that part of their television deals, they earned $110 billion in rights, in which going through the 2033 season, that one game each year will be streamed of the international games that are played. So I guess if you're going to pick one of the international games for it to honestly to be a bad matchup for us here in America that aren't going to pay that extra money, I was okay with it. I mean, it wasn't a great game, so I wasn't that disappointed that I missed it. Like if you would put on a good matchup with like the Chiefs and somebody else, I would be disappointed, but in the same breath, that might mean a lot of other people who maybe were thinking about paying for it were deciding, you know what, I'm not going to pay for it because it's not a good enough game for me. But I will say, yes, you are right, Steve, that the fans over there, they packed the stadium. They had over 86,000, their biggest crowd. So they're all in. I can tell you that on Amazon, they're down viewerships on Thursday nights. They're averaging only 12.1 million as opposed to previously 16.4 million. ESPN Plus does not give us viewer rights or tell us how many streamed that game, which is a little unfortunate. I kind of wish we would kind of get that information. I mean, I understand streaming. I just wish that maybe people in the local market still would get it. And maybe some of us that don't want to pay, you're already paying for a cable service probably, or direct TV. You're already paying to get rights to watch some of those things. To add it on to another stream, Amazon and this and that. I mean, where's it going to stop? Are we going to start paying for every game we watch?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll find out, TBD. All right, Mel, some thoughts about ESPN Plus getting into streaming business for NFL stuff.
Yeah, I agree with Candy. Those games, a lot of people aren't watching anyway because they're kind of early in the morning. But I'm kind of used to it. Being in the West Coast, I like waking up at 10 o'clock and be able to start watching football games when I lived on the West Coast. But I really forget about those games because they do a poor job of marketing those games when they're coming on. I really forget about those games. But the fact that they put it on ESPN Plus, I'm not going to pay for another subscription service. I mean, I already have Amazon Prime, and that's only because I get something what I feel of value for Amazon Prime because I get that free delivery with the stuff that I order. I think I have Netflix only because I'm a T-Mobile customer, and so I get that for free. I think I get HBO because my daughter has AT&T, and I think they get that for free. I mean, it's a money grab. I mean, the consumer only has so much money that they can continue to pay for this stuff. And like Candy said, you're already paying for cable. Back when we grew up, it was over the air. You're watching this stuff on regular network television.
Right.
You got to watch all the football games. When the NFL started doing Thursday night games at one particular time, they started doing an NFL network. I wasn't watching those games. Then they started doing that dual broadcast, I think, with Fox or CBS or something like that. So you could watch. So some people who didn't have the NFL network at that particular time could also watch those games as well. I think that's a huge mistake for it to be an ESPN Plus. I wasn't thinking about, I'm not going to buy ESPN Plus. I mean, it's just not something I want to do. So if I miss one game, then so be it. I'll miss one game, and I would have to think viewership is down with the Amazon Prime because again, as Kerry was saying, you got to have a certain amount of bandwidth in order to get that picture in HD. A long time ago, that was a huge thing. So that eats up a lot of your bandwidth. So if you don't have a cable subscription where you're getting unlimited data, that's going to eat into it. Now I don't know how much that game, how much data that eats into, but still, those are all things that the consumer has to think about. And I just think that the NFL is being real short-sighted and kind of arrogant, just assuming that people are just going to continue to pay for this stuff, even though they can get some games for free. I'll just miss that game and watch it comes on free, and that wasn't a game that I wanted to watch anyway. So I'll just wait for the free games to come on.
Yeah, see, and I'll conclude this topic by saying, number one, okay, I have zero interest in ESPN Plus. I have a certain limit about how much money I'm going to spend, and everybody can probably agree that there's a limitation how much money you want to dole out. And at one point, you draw the line. I have no problem, but ESPN Plus isn't anything. I don't mind getting league passes like NHL or things like that if I think I'm going to use them, whether it's MLB. I don't even get the NBA, but the two things I have through my cable company, the NHL and MLB, I figure I'll get a fair amount of use. But again, ESPN Plus, no, I'm not interested in that. So I'm with you, Mel. If you have to sit here and cut them out and draw the line, nothing against ESPN per se. I get a lot of their network out of their network or whatever I do, but ESPN Plus isn't something I care to visit. All right. Let's stay with the ESPN thing for just a moment. ESPN's Ryan Clark on Get Up said the NFL is a right now league while you have your franchise quarterback. Do you agree, Steve Ballesteri? A right now league?
I think that's very true for for the vast majority of teams. You used to see quarterbacks come in, a highly touted rookie quarterback come in from college, and they would groom this guy, for the first 2 years. And then in year 3, they were expecting him to be, putting the team up in that upper echelon. That's no more. These kids come in from college now, and same with the head coaches. Hey, we want to win today. There's no transition, and a lot of the bad teams are really, guilty of that because, they hire these coaches and then a year and a half later, they're letting these guys go and paying them huge amount of money to go away, as we talked about last week here, with Matt Rule. And they want to win right away. It's a absolute. I agree with Ryan Clark. That's one of the few times I do, but I agree with them. It's a win right now league.
Yeah, that's why when I heard the topic, I thought this was certainly worth bringing up. I wasn't going to bring it up on my other shows this week because I feel the crew we have is more equipped to answer it than some of the other ones as we get harder topic. And that's why I'm bringing it on tonight. All right, Candy, some observations on this one.
I would agree with Steve. It's a right now. It has to be, because look at the contracts and look at, you can get injured at any moment and your season career can be done. So yes, you are in it right now to play right now. Yes, you hope you're going to be playing for years, but you're not guaranteed that. So everybody's got to be all in. They're so quick these days to fire somebody because, the team isn't performing like we thought they would, or we're not getting the same results. I don't think they have the patience. And I would say that is in all fields. Nobody has patience ever since the pandemic. Nobody has patience anymore. So because it's such a big money industry and you have to have the revenue to be able to keep affording the players, because let's face it, the players are making a lot of money. You have to be in it right now. It's become that, and I think money has driven it.
All right, Carrie, some thoughts?
So I see that as, it's everybody's wanting we have gotten to where we want instant gratification. So we want instantly our team to be the best, our quarterback to be the flashiest. We want our quarterback to be the new GOAT. That's where we are. It's that instant gratification that is needed, or desired, not needed, desired. I kind of miss a little bit of the watching these coaches, especially our well-seasoned, our leading veteran coaches, and their ability to progress and move a player, a quarterback, a running back, whoever it is, and coach them and guide them and build them up, and let us see that progression happen. Because there's no room for that anymore. It's, if they're not now, then we have to move on to the next person, and that's kind of sad in a way. And I'm fortunate that my team has a veteran leader. They have the guidance of Andy Reid and taking in those people and being able to coach them and grow them. But not everybody has an Andy Reid, or drawing blanks at the moment, but you don't have that across the league. And that's where I feel like a lot of these kids coming out of college are missing out on being able to be coached and grown into the position.
Well, I think one thing I'll add to that before I turn it over to Mel is the fact that you had Alex Smith, who played 15 of 16 games, and then they eased Mahomes in when he was ready. So that's attributed to what Reid did, rather than just stick Mahomes in early. So I think, again, that's attributed to coaching. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Mel. Right now, league?
Yeah, without question. I mean, especially, you got to understand the quarterbacks and the head coaches are kind of tied together. I mean, there's a short leash for the coaches, there's a short leash for the high draft picks. And it doesn't help when you have guys like Brian Daboll come in and having the kind of success that he's having. Coach of Minnesota, he comes in, he's having the kind of success that he's having. That doesn't help the other guys at all. They say, well, man, if he's doing it, why can't you do it? At the end of the day, you got to have some horses. And, that's the problem that the Lions have. They don't have any horses. I mean, Nick Saban said it. He found out that he was a better coach when he coached better players, when he coached good players. So you have to have something to work with a lot of these cases in order to turn these franchises around. And sometimes the coaches just don't have what they need in order to turn these franchises around. And unfortunately, the way the draft is set up, the best players go to the worst teams. And they're not just bad football teams, they're generally bad organizations. There's a lot of things going wrong with it. And you expect one young kid, 20, 21, 22 years old, to change the fortunes of a franchise. And it's a lot to put on a young kid. And so, a lot of these kids don't get that opportunity to develop. They don't, when I came up in the league, a guy would sit, 2-3 years before he got his opportunity to play. These guys now are coming in and they're expected to play, especially if you're drafted in the first round, you're expected to play immediately. And have some success. You know, I think what's going on with Justin Fields, I think that's a travesty. I mean, we know the kid can play. You know, they try to say, oh, you know, there's never been a quarterback from Ohio State that's been successful in the NFL. Well, you know, maybe because of some of the situations that those particular players have found themselves in when they got drafted to the league. You know, other than like Art Schlichter, who, you know, he just kind of torpedoed his career. Right. But I mean, I think Justin Fields, you know, I've watched this kid since he was in high school. One thing I know he can do is he can play football. But now here he is, you know, he's in his second year, and guess what? He's on his second coach. He's on his second offensive coordinator. So he's learning a whole new offense. Good coaches don't try to show how smart they are by, you know, trying to make a quarterback fit their system. A good coach tries to make his system fit his quarterback. Right. Like what they've done up in Baltimore. You know, they totally revamped their system. Philadelphia totally revamped their system. He's not too proud to say, well, okay, you know I came from this tree and this is what we do. You know, he's not too proud to say, hey, you know, this is what we have. This is what he does well, and we need to utilize that. We need to take advantage of that. And, you know, Justin Fields, he has a lot of the same talent or traits as Jalen Hurts. But do they use him in that way? No. I know that Justin Fields likes to be in the pocket. I know he considers himself a pocket quarterback, but he's also a great athlete. Lamar Jackson, I think he felt he was a pocket quarterback coming out of Louisville, but he's a great athlete too. Probably, you know, the best athlete on the football team. And Justin Fields is probably the best athlete on his football team. We know Jalen Hurts is the best athlete on his football team. You know, my Uncle Joe, who coached high school football, he always said, man, I put my best athlete at quarterback. That's who I want having the ball all the time. So if something goes out of whack, at least he can make something out of nothing. And I think, you know, you got to give these guys an opportunity and try to focus on what they do well and try to coach them on the things they don't do so well.
Well, the only thing
I'll
say about this is many years ago, whether you guys know or not, I worked with Don Shula first couple of years as a journalist for a company called the Hollandale Digest. And Coach Shula told me that the one thing that he does is he wants to make sure that he works to a player's strength. So that definitely illustrates what you're saying, Mel, for sure. And I've said this on this show and other shows before. A quarterback should have a redshirt year the first year and hold a clipboard no matter what the situation is. Do not succumb to fan pressure. Let the guy hold a clipboard and learn. The only way that he should come in is maybe due to injury, and that's it. Otherwise, let him sit for a year and whether they get it figured out. But that's what Don Shula taught me many years ago when I worked with the Dolphins many years ago. Is that he goes out there and you play to a player's strengths, not get him to do what he can do, not what he can't do. All right. So, but that said, we'll move on to another subject, one that is certainly, as the week has come on, has picked up a lot of steam, and I mean a lot of steam. The Washington Commanders announced that Tanya and Dan Snyder have hired Bank of America Securities to explore a sale of their franchise. They were recently valued at $5.6 billion per Forbes. The team is currently under criminal investigation. Names like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk will be talked about as potential buyers. I've even heard Jay-Z connected to it. So, Katie, I'm going to start with you. You're the financial person here. Give me some thoughts about the man who wrecked Jack Kent Cook's franchise. Jack Kent Cook had a great franchise until he turned it over to Dan Snyder. But you're the financial person. Let's talk about Bank of America Securities being in running this whole thing.
I was kind of surprised, but I did a little research, and they actually helped the LA Clippers sell. So, but I'm really kind of surprised because a bank would be federally regulated, and why they're getting their hands into selling an NFL football team, I was kind of surprised. But, you know, he needs to sell it. He needs to be done. They need to be out. They need somebody other than them, obviously, to do it, because they're even under investigation. So I guess who's going to do it? I guess it makes sense that somebody that's federally regulated and watched like a hawk help them. At my 2 cents.
All right, Carrie, Give me your 2, 3, 4, or 5 cents on this one.
So my nickel is Dan Snyder. What should have been ousted years ago. I'm interested to see how the investigations, if they progress, and how much is tagged to the team or to the Snyders as far as the inconsistencies that are being investigated. I think Snyder's greasy and has brought a bad taste to light. Is he the only one? Probably not, but it's time to move him on. I'm not fond of him, but I'll be polite.
Well, I remember years ago before I turned over to Mel Farr that Daniel Snyder, when he bought the team, charged his fan base money to see them in training camp. If that doesn't tell me he's a dirtbag, then I don't know what does. So, and of course now they're in a situation where that stadium, FedEx Field, is falling apart, and they can't get a stadium deal done. And I'm not sure they're going to get one done until the organization changes hands. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mel Farr Jr. and give me your take on the Washington Redskins Commanders football team dysfunctional mess.
I mean, either way, he wins. I mean, whether he decides to stay, he wins. If he leaves, he wins. If he decides to sell, he wins. I mean, he paid $800 million for the franchise. It's probably worth $5-6 billion right now.
Yeah,
man, who's going to cry for him?
That's true.
I mean, who's going to shed some tears for him? Obviously, there's a lot of resentment with him and amongst the owners. There's a lot of things that he's done over the years that have not set well with the fans there locally. And obviously, he's had some problems within his organization with the way that he ran his organization. Right. So, yeah, it's time for him to move on. He's had a great run, 25 years, however long it's been. He's had a great run there. He's had a lot of fun with the team. Hasn't had very much success, but he's had a lot of fun with that team. It's trying to give somebody else an opportunity. But, I mean, he's going to walk away a winner either way.
Yeah, make a lot of money. All right, Steve.
Yeah, it couldn't happen fast enough, I think.
Right.
I just think was it Candy or Carrie that said he's oily. I think that's a really good description of him. There's so many investigations going on with this and with that, and it all goes right to the top. It's not low level guys, and and they're not going to get a new stadium because no one is going to fund him to get a new stadium as long as he's the owner. Right. So I'm sure behind the scenes, the league is pushing him out the door and they're doing it quietly, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason. They've hired these people now. It's because they're going to push him out the door, probably with the unwritten, I guess, promise of certain things that comes out of this. So I don't know that for a fact. That's just a swag on my part, but it couldn't happen fast enough. This guy, like you said, charging people to go to training camp.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. That's the reason they started letting people in was it's for the fans. You could see the players up close and personal, and this guy who's a billionaire is trying to dig into your pocket. That's just disgusting.
Well, on last night's edition of the Sports Exchange, I had a guy named Mark Maraday on who I met out in Cooperstown, who's from the greater Maryland area. He says right now they're selling tickets for like $5, and a lot of these suites are not even being sold. So you're right, Steve, to put a ribbon on this one or a bow on it, if you want to call it. The NFL will move this sale along a lot faster than they've moved along any other sale, depending on who steps up to the plate and goes ahead and writes a check. So, yeah, no, I know that there's a process in many ways to get these things done. You know what? That's the process. Snap your finger. It will be gone before you know it. So, all right, well, I had to get it out of the way. It's certainly a trending topic. I want to give everybody a crack at it. Now we have the Green Bay Packers version of the show. And let's go ahead and turn it over to Mrs. Packer here that I have to deal with over the weekend. I was divided. But anyways, Aaron Rodgers on Packers not making moves at the trade deadline. Brian Gutekunst, I'm referring to, he said, didn't think whatever was out there was worth whatever was required of what was given up. This sends a message to us that we've got to play with the guys we have, and we have to win with the guys we've got. So let me ask you a question, Miss Candy, okay? Is that a $40 million message from a guy who couldn't stomach Brian Gutekunst a year ago and who's eating up about a third of the payroll? I mean, now he don't care what targets he has, and he ran Devontae Adams out the door. So, I want to preface his quote again, okay, just so that we understand that it comes down to, and this is a part that really boggles my mind, okay, that the message to what we've got to play with the guys that we've got to win with and the guys we've got. That's a part of the quote to me. That doesn't sound like an Aaron Rodgers to me that was upset about adding anybody in the first round in past years to get a wideout or anything like this. This is a guy who's pocketing $40 to $50 million this year and don't mind doing it. And as long as I can collect a check and buy a lot of stock and cheese, this is what you have from the new Rodgers, who, by the way, goes on the Pat McAfee show to say what he wants. Anyways, all right, Candy, take it away.
So Rodgers wanted a lot of money. Rodgers got paid a lot of money. If he gets paid all that money, there's not as much money to go around to everybody else. And he's got to realize that. And I think he's starting to realize that. Not that he's willing to give up any of his money, but he's realizing, maybe we can't, pay so much for this person and so much for this. And maybe if I give up all my draft picks, then I can't possibly pick up somebody else that might turn out to be good. I read an article that said we were in the runnings for Claypool, but that Pittsburgh was debating because the offer was the same. We offered the same amount that the Chicago Bears offered. They decided that they would go with the Bears because they thought the Bears would have a worse record at the end of the year, so their second round draft pick would be higher than the Packers draft pick. So therefore the Steelers wanted a higher draft pick, so they went with the Bears instead of trading with the Packers. Is that true or not? I can't say. Is it true that the Bears are going to have a better or worse record than the Packers? I can't even say that right now. They're not playing to their strength. They're not gelling. I think Aaron Rodgers' head has gotten in the way of the team gelling with the rest of the guys. And until he realizes that, they're not going to do well. I mean, they're going to do okay. Don't get me wrong, because everyone's going to go out on the field and try. But they will not be the team to beat that we always thought they were the last couple of years.
All right. With that said, Candy, why don't you give company information?
So if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to our South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Hit the red button in the corner that says subscribe. You can always find all of our good content on www.southfloridatribune.com. If you wanted to advertise, you could call 954-304-4941. If you like to listen to podcasts on iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, or wherever you like to hear your podcast, look for us and listen.
Very good. All right, Carrie, you had a chance to digest his Rodgers stuff. So what's your take on it?
Honestly, I feel like Aaron Rodgers got what he wanted, and he played a spoiled toddler last year, and this year I've got my toys. I don't have to do anything but just stay maintain. So, I feel like Devontae Adams got shafted in the entire situation. You've got a number one player that loved working with Rodgers, that was being able to score and have success in Green Bay, and he's gone to the Raiders, and we all know that's been a train wreck. I feel like Rodgers is kind of giving up, and are we seeing him kind of getting ready to throw in the towel? He's having his worst season ever as a pro. So I don't know. I feel like it falls back onto Rodgers and the fact that he's demanded so much and he's not putting forth the effort on his side is what I see.
Fair enough. Okay. Steve, what's your take on Aaron Rodgers, where he stands? Obviously, didn't like Brian Gutekunst a year. Now he's defending him for not making any moves and still laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, exactly. He's about Aaron Rodgers, and he got his money, and to me, he looks like he's just going through the motions. You know what I mean? As long as he gets to throw a couple of touchdown passes, he's a happy camper, and because it makes him look good. But is he really a team guy if he's taking all the money and not allowing, the powers that be to surround him with better weapons? I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how many quarterbacks devour most of the salary cap and all of a sudden you're left with the breadcrumbs? That sums it up for me. And I know Candy and I have to deal with this football game on Sunday. So, I think the Packers have to win against the Lions because life doesn't get any easier for them. After that, with 3 tough games, and the Lions need to win one just to save their sanity before this thing goes south in a hurry. It's already south at 1-6. But
I'm picking the Lions this week.
Yeah, you know what? I am too. Even though they gave up, they traded T.J. Hawkinson to a division rival. And I'm still baffled by the move. But, the only thing I'll say, it's a good thing that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes got long deals to justify moves like this. That's all I can tell you. But I will pick the Lions over the Packers. She has the Packers, so we have the great divide here. But the Packers lose this game to Detroit. Boy, life is going to get even more difficult in Green Bay. The Lions right now, hate to say, have everything to gain, nothing to lose to begin with on Sunday, but they really do. I mean, look where they're at now. They have one way to go up, I think. With that said, Mr. Resident Lion, whose dad played for him, Mel, give me your take on the Rodgers situation.
I mean, Aaron can't be crying. I mean, like everybody said, he took all the money, so he shouldn't be surprised that they did make a move. They don't have any money to make a move. Even if they had a little money this year, I mean, to squeeze somebody in, they're not going to have any money for that player next year. If they had a trade and that player had a contract, they wouldn't have the room for him. So, I don't care to hear a whole lot that Aaron Rodgers has to say because nobody's done more with less than Tom Brady did. I mean, they always talk about he needs this kind of receiver, he needs that. I mean, Tom Brady had one guy who was a Hall of Fame receiver when he was with the Patriots, and that was that one year he had Randy Moss.
Right.
He's gotten the most out of Wes Welkers and Amendolas and Hogans and a whole host of wide receivers that we can go. Troy Brown, that we can go on and on and on and on and on to talk about. He's but it's the way that he dealt with him, as opposed to how Aaron is dealing with him. I mean, the guy didn't show up for any of the off-season workouts. Right. So how do you expect to have any kind of chemistry with these guys? How do you expect to have some kind of rapport with these guys? And then all you want to do is call them out. You may not call them out by name, but you go on the radio and call them out like you're just sitting up here on high, and everybody else is beneath you. He's not going to have a relationship with these players. These players aren't going to play for him. It's going to be very, very difficult to get these players to pay for them. And then they're getting paid, but it's going to be very difficult for these players to have a positive attitude in their mind when they go out there and they cross these lines about their quarterback. And again, like I said, when I saw him get sacked last week and the guy went to help him up and he wouldn't grab his hand, I'm done with Aaron Rodgers. I really am. I mean, he's just, he thinks he's better than everybody. He thinks he's smarter than everybody in the room. Obviously, we know he's making more money than everybody. And, this is what he has to deal with. I mean, I hope they don't win another game the rest of the year. I could really care less about Aaron Rodgers and his problems.
Well, here's the thing. You touched on a couple of good points, Mel. Number one, he should have been at every OTA available to get familiar with his wide receivers. Number one, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And he's coming across as I'm the king of the rascal. Castle, you're the dirty rascal. Let me tell you, that doesn't work in any sport, let alone the NFL. So you better be committed to your teammates, especially when you have newer ones to begin with. And you don't have the benefit of 4 preseason games. You have 3. Not that he played in any of them anyhow, and you have those workouts. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers committed enough to the offseason program to get familiar with his new targets. I really don't. And, let's face it, the man even didn't get along with his family, let alone his new wide receivers. So, yeah, he's definitely having, I know, Candy, not a easy day that we're all beating up on your quarterback. But the reality is I still like Brett Favre better than Rodgers all day long anyways. I'll take the consecutive game streak all day long. Forget about his recent activity. It had nothing to do with the football field. But to me, Aaron Rodgers, like Mel said, you know what? He's Tom Brady's had to make a lot out of nothing with wherever he's been. Where Rodgers has fed off of Devontae Adams, and he's had a lot of. I think his Rodgers receiver scores have been a lot better overall than Tom Brady's through the years. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for the Packers. That's for sure the rest of the way. And I think they got off easy knowing they only lost by 10 points to the Buffalo Bills, 27-17, because they could have been a whole lot worse than that. And I expected it to be. All right, well, I want to get to the big story of the week. And it's one I'm really not like to talk about, but unfortunately, it's what we have to do. Michigan 29, Michigan State 27. Spartans get 8 players suspended, and there should be one. So the question is, and there could be more as well, but should there be one team in the tunnel at a time, more criminal charges and discipline forthcoming? Let me tell you, in this whole scenario, Michigan State looks bad, and there was a prior incident with Penn State where the Nittany Lions were causing some problems. But this is something that cannot continue. You know, Mel, I know you're really big when it comes to colleges and so forth, but what happened with the Spartans to me just makes that program look bad. Now, I had a panelist yesterday that thought they should get the death penalty. So I wouldn't go that far because we're talking about an isolated incident like that. But I think that Michigan State should be penalized in the harshest way possible beyond what they're doing. And I suppose down the line we might. But Mel, give me your perspective on what took place in Ann Arbor, because none of it was good if you're a green and white, if you're rooting for the green and white.
Yeah, I mean, you got young kids, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, a lot of testosterone in those tunnels. They shouldn't be. I mean, you should wait, let one team go in, everybody get in the locker room, let the other team go in. It's only a couple minutes, so you don't have those kind of problems. But again, as a head coach, I mean, you got to have some kind of control over your players and let them know that this type of, this is unacceptable. I mean, we already had the one incident at Penn State the week before, and then the very next week, you got 4, 5, 6 players jumping on one guy. I mean, these are a bunch of thugs. These guys act like a bunch of thugs. I mean, these are football players. I mean, what kind of kids are you recruiting? I mean, you recruiting a bunch of thugs, or you recruiting football players? This is ridiculous. So, I mean, these guys, man, I mean, that's an embarrassment. I mean, they're representing more than just the Michigan State University. They're representing their families. They're representing themselves. I'm sure that's not how their parents would want those kids to represent them when they send them off to school. So, I mean, that's just an embarrassment. But to try to keep that kind of stuff from happening, because you do have young kids and there is a lot of testosterone flowing, man, just let one team go in there. Once they're in their locker room, then let the other team go up in there. Then you don't have those kind of problems.
Yeah, it's a shame it has to come to that point. Mel Tucker looks very bad in this thing. He really does. And Michigan State locked them up to a long-term deal. So if they don't win within the next couple of years, they may be eating a lot of that money. So Steve Ballesteri, let's look at the whole incident itself. This, to me, is absolutely bad. And I hope Michigan State gets punished even more than what they are now. I don't care if it's probation. I don't care if it's losing scholarships or whatever. I can understand a lot of things, but they lost on the field, and now they looks like they've lost on the field. And there could be some criminal charges, and we know that there's a bunch of lawsuits and lawyers going to get involved. But I've seen a lot of things over the years. But, Steve, this one takes the cake in terms of lack of sportsmanship and class. And the Michigan State Spartans right now, to me, are the biggest laughing stock and embarrassment on the planet because of what happened at Michigan. And Jim Harbaugh said as such, too, that there will be a lot more. And it'll take more than an apology. It'll take an awful lot to get them out of this jackpot, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the tape, and I have, I mean, it has nothing to do with football. It has nothing to do with a heated rivalry. It was assault. I mean, There was a helmetless Michigan player, and it looked like 4 or 5 guys jumped on top of him, and they were beating him. That's unacceptable. It's criminal. It actually is criminal. It makes the program and the coach look really, really bad. I mean, and I agree with Harbaugh to an extent. I mean, there's an apology is not going to make it. I mean, I think criminal charges will probably follow from that, and I think they should. For the most part, I think the court should stay out of sporting events, but in certain instances like this, it was off the field, and it was. I thought, if it wasn't so serious, it would have almost been funny, because I'm like, looks like something out of Jerry Springer. You know what I mean? I mean, this is not a top level college football team. That's not the way you handle business. And they suspended 4 guys indefinitely. I think they should have been kicked off the team immediately and let the law take its course. You shouldn't have to separate teams going into the tunnel, because they're supposed to have, the love of the game in the sport first, and just because you lose to a heated rival, once it's over, that's it. The game's over. You go about your business. You represent your school and, your fellow players in the best way possible. That wasn't it.
Yeah, well, they suspended 4 and then added 4 more as the week goes on. I'll be curious to see how many more dominoes drop with this as well. So, yeah, this is really a bad look. I mean, think about it. Michigan State Spartans are being talked about all week because of this incident, not because of the game result on the field and their next opponent. That's bad. I mean, for all the way around. This isn't what George Burles and Duffy Doherty, Mark D'Antonio, and the rest of the Spartan legends ever visualized that such a debacle like this would take place, let alone against a state rival. So, Carrie, what are your thoughts on that?
So, as I was sitting here, I was just writing down some things that come to mind. Is one, I'm going to start, and I was going back to high school. So, I'm going to take it back a little bit here, then build up. In high school, when I did stats for both the football and the basketball team, I was required to be dressed with hose, dress shoes. I mean, the full bit. That the guys were dressed in, they had to have suit coats and ties on, and you were required to present yourself that reflected not only the school, our team, our families, but you're representing the community. As I've watched, and we see it across the board, they've gone to showing up in sweats, torn jeans, and I'm talking from college level. You see that the pregame, the college level to professional, that we're letting them have their own style, which is wonderful, but we're losing that decorum, that pride of who you're representing, yourself, your team, your organization, your community. And I feel like there's a loss of leadership in that aspect. I think Michigan State needs to lose, the players need to lose any scholarship they have and no chance to regain. They need to lose university privileges. I think the university should be sanctioned and lose scholarship money. I think that because this can't be what happens. This needs to be set as a precedence and keep this from going forward. We don't need to worry about these gentlemen running rampant in the facility that's providing them, and especially with this name, with an NIL in place. You don't want that. You want money to come into your school with that NIL and your programs. You've just put a scar on yourself. So I feel like it's really bad. It's a really bad look. And yeah. I think it starts with leadership. And I think it starts with leadership from your coaching staff and your athletic director or whatever it is. So it's a lot of leadership that's missing.
Well, it goes from the president, the athletic director, and all the way down to the coaching staff. And I'll tell you what, Michigan State's got a tough task ahead of them this week. They're 3-5, and they take on Illinois, led by Brett Bielema, the former Wisconsin coach, who's 7-1. They're playing some good football out in Champaign this week, and this incident's going to be talked about throughout that telecast, let alone the fact they'll be down some players. So Michigan State could be 3-6. They could be out of a bowl matchup anyways. With that said, Candy, take it away.
I am so disappointed that college scholarship athletes would even think to act like that coming off of playing a football game, playing their sport. They went to school, they got a scholarship to play a sport, and to have that be the outcome after the game, it's criminal. It really was criminal, and there is going to be criminal charges. It saddens me that they take it to this level. Like Carrie said, there isn't the same level of respect, and it's not just in sports, but there's the lack of respect of another human being and their life and their livelihood. Now, we don't know how much it affected the people that they attacked. You don't know how they're going to be scarred, if they're going to be scarred for life, or if you did. And it's awful. It really is. It saddens me that it comes down to that. I'm also saddened that, like, let's face it, Michigan has had this tunnel for over 100 years, I think I read.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been incidences 2 weeks in a row. So my question, and not to put the blame on Michigan, but and I had heard that there was another incident last year with Ohio State as well, with the tunnel. If that's the case, and this was the third time that there's a problem, then you need to manage that tunnel better. And I hate to say it's got to come down to that, but obviously it has to. Whether it means after a game, whoever loses the game goes into the tunnel. The other people can be out on the field celebrating. I miss the days when you played another team after the game in sportsmanship, you went over and congratulated the other team. And some sports still do it. Not all sports do. But I think that gave you a sense of, we played a game, we left it all on the field, and we're congratulating the team that beat us. And they just beat us. It's not, we don't need to now go and physically beat them. I was just sad. I think sportsmanship has gone out the window, and that's what makes me sad. Respect.
Yeah, it's afraid it's all come down to this, but if there's any positive stuff that comes out of it at the expense of Michigan State, and let me say that again, at the expense of Michigan State, maybe the rest of the nation will learn from this situation, because I guarantee you Michigan State's going to get the book thrown at them. What you've seen is nothing compared to what's going to happen with the authorities, let alone with the NCAA, let alone with the conference. So let's just hope there's a learning experience somewhere along the way, but this is really bad. All right, we got two other topics I want to get to, and then we're going to do our parting shots. And Carrie, I know it's for your first rodeo. The parting shots give you an opportunity to talk about any sport you want, not let alone football. So we'll let you think about that and brew on that for a little bit. So with that said, we'll go on to something a little easier here. Trevor Lawrence is 5-20. He's the worst record amongst quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall through 25 career starts in the common draft era. Okay, what do you think is going wrong with him, Carrie? Trevor Lawrence was a winner at Clemson. Obviously, we had to deal with Urban Meyer. Now he's got Doug Peterson, but that record's not very good.
No, and as we're in the carousel, and Alex, my friend, senior friend, dubbed him Sunshine. Sunshine did not have any support last year. He was thrown to the wolves, and no one cared about. I mean, he didn't have anybody there to help guide him. It's back to that win now, play now, and you're gone. So he had no guidance his first year. And I do appreciate the fact that they brought in Doug Peterson. I think that was a bold move for him. But unfortunately for Trevor, people are still remembering last year's performance when he was having to basically coach himself,
right,
and learn the NFL. And I just hope that there's someone that's willing to give him the shot that he deserves, because he did have those key elements, and he was an exciting quarterback to watch in Clemson. So I hope that he's given the chance, but in that play now, earn now mindset, is this going to be detrimental to him because last year was so ugly?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, 5-20 and 25 career starts being the worst. Obviously, he can turn around. I don't think he's anywhere near bust territory, and they're lucky they have Doug Peterson. All right, Candy, what are your thoughts about Trevor Lawrence?
I think it goes back to the same throwing him right in, throwing him with they don't have the weapons that a lot of other teams have. Throwing him into different playing systems between the 2 years too, because remember, you have new coaches, you have new offensive coordinators, you have a new quarterback coach. All those things you have to relearn. And last year, your first year in the NFL, which has always been your dream, and here you're with a coach that has all these extra, how do I put it, extra things going on that take your mind away from the actual field, your position, what you need to do, and developing you, because there's all these distractions. I
Oh,
think
let's get to it, Candy. Okay, Urban Meyer was an absolute cotton picking mess, and that was what you're trying to say, but you're trying to do it in a nice way. Okay, Urban Meyer was toxic. He's as toxic to them as Kyrie Irving is to sports. Okay, I had to throw that in there. But let's face it, okay. And Doug Peterson said, forget about what you learned the first year. You didn't learn anything. You're starting over. Go ahead, Andy. Continue.
So I was going to say, it's almost like he's starting over. Like this is really his first year in the NFL, getting more feet wet. Yes, he's not performing as well as everybody thought he would. But again, it's going to take time. And we all said coming out, you should be sitting 2-3 years watching somebody good. And he didn't have that opportunity either. So he's had a couple of things that I think have distracted, hurt him developmentally, that I think we just need to be patient, and nobody wants to be patient these days.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, well, it comes down to this. When he came in as a rookie last year, there was a reason the Jaguars had the number 1 pick, and they were terrible. And he had no support around him. The team around him was really, really poor. And he was learning on the fly with a coach, as you said, was a train wreck. So, they fire him. Now, this year, they bring in Doug Peterson. It's not going to get fixed overnight. This is what we talked about right off the bat, the right now mentality. Right. Everyone wants him to be lighting it up like, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. It takes time when you don't have the team around you. And they're still a really bad football team in a lot of ways. They're getting better, but they're not there yet. And they have to find a way as a team to win games now that they're losing, because they're hanging with some teams. They're just not finishing. And you can't blame it all on the quarterback, but the same people that will point to his record will point to another guy's record and say, well, wins aren't a quarterback stat. Well, but it's only when it suits your argument. Right. So if they're not a quarterback stat, then you can't use that against them. Granted, they're a bad football team, but I think this kid is really talented. I just hope they can turn it around before he gets ruined, picking up bad habits because they're losing all the time.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that, Steve, is once upon a time, Troy Aikman was 1-15 under Jimmy Johnson. How did that turn out? Oh, pretty good.
Exactly.
All right, Mel.
Yeah, I think you have to disregard his year one because, he had egomaniac as a head coach, dysfunction. So he went from function to dysfunction, and now he's got some, he's got some structure around him. We'll go from structure to dysfunction to structure. So you got to totally discount last year and say this is year one. And the kids, he went from learning English to last year he learned Portuguese. Now he's learning Mandarin. So he's learning 3 different languages. He was speaking English for 3 years in college. Forget about all that you learned in college. Now you got to learn Portuguese, and you got to learn it right now. Okay, well, and then that coach gets out, and now you got a new coach coming in, and now you got to learn Mandarin, and you got to learn it now. man, that's tough, man. You're asking a whole lot of the kid. So his head's still swimming right now. So give the kid a chance. I mean, we know he has potential. Hell, we've been talking about this kid since he's been in high school. I've been watching this kid since he was I want to say a sophomore in high school, and they've been talking about he's going to be the best thing since sliced bread since he was in high school. They've been talking about this kid that long about, he's the next Peyton Manning and so forth and so on. So we know he's got some talent. The one thing he had at Clemson too that he doesn't have in Jacksonville, he had some horses. He had some other guys out there as well. He had some playmakers. He was a distributor. I think he's with the right coach that's going to get him to that position where he's going to be the distributor again, and they're going to get some talent in there. I saw that they traded for the kid from Atlanta that came from Alabama that's suspended for gambling.
You're talking about Ridley
right now.
Yeah,
they traded for Calvin Ridley. So they're going to have, they're going to have some playmakers out there for him next year. So totally discount last year. And again, we talked about it earlier. High draft status, high expectation. But high draft status, worst team, dysfunction. That's why they had a new coach come in there to try to, clean some things up. And he ended up being worse than what they had in there before. So you just got to give the kid a chance, man. Give him an opportunity, get some stability around him, and give him an opportunity. And he should be all right. We know he has all the intangibles and all the physical attributes. So he just needs an opportunity.
Yeah, who am I to say anything about foreign language? Let me give you guys a little laugh here in this show. Once upon a time when I was in high school, okay, Candy's heard this a million times, but you guys will hear it for the first time. I attempted to take a Spanish class. How did that work out? About a week into it, I went back to woodshop too. I tried to take another one. I think it was German, which was even worse than Spanish. How did that end up? I ended up going to mental shop, and then I ran out of shop classes, and I ran out of patience with foreign languages. So if that wasn't any good, I went to the University of South Florida. When I saw that they had a foreign language requirement, I took so many classes in the last 9 months so I could avoid it and barely got past the foreign language requirement with the skin of my teeth and graduated August of 1986. So when Mel talks about foreign languages, duh. I try to stay away from those things. I'm not any good at them. So, all right, well, let's go down from one end of I-95 to the other. Tuatagovailoa is 11-2 in his last 13 starts, and 12-1 in the last 13 games he's finished. He's 18-9 in 27 career starts in 2017. That's the third best mark in the league. Well, you know what? If Tua stays on the field, the Miami Dolphins win. So with that said, Carrie, give you an easier landing spot about Tua.
I'm going to have an unpopular opinion. The young man is talented, and he has a really good football acuity. He is a great and entertaining person to watch. He is also as precious as a Fabergé egg and as fragile, in my opinion. We've watched it already this season, and as a parent, as a fan of the league, all of this, I'm concerned about Tua's long-term health, and the fact that it makes me sad that it feels like no one is stepping up and saying, "Listen, let's protect this man, this young man, and let's maybe ease him into a coaching or something." I'm just concerned this kid is not. I thought we watched him die on the field, so I'm concerned that we're going to see him become damaged goods, and that as much as he is a fantastic player, I'm concerned about his longevity and his health.
Candy?
Tua, when he came out, everybody wondered about his health. They wondered about how his hip, his ankles, his legs, was he going to be injured? How injury prone was he? He's proved to be, he is injury prone, but he is a good quarterback, and he's exciting. He's taking the team, moving the ball, getting them some wins here and there. I hope he overcomes the injuries and that he stays healthy and stays on the field.
All right, well, Steve, give me your thoughts about Tua. Obviously, he's taking a beating, that's for sure. And I like to talk around with my people saying that you know what? I'm like a Timex watch. You know, everybody knows about the Timex watch. Take a licking and keep on ticking. I take a licking and keep on talking. I had to throw that in. All right, Steve. And I'm
Well,
sure you got the premise of that.
think about, a year or two ago, the the powers that be in Miami were ready to move on from him.
Yeah.
They weren't a very good football team. You have to go back, when Brian Flores was quarterback. I mean, the head coach. Excuse me. When Brian Flores was there, there was a lot of talk about getting rid of him. Then they started putting weapons around him. They started surrounding him with better players, and lo and behold, he's not the bust everyone thought. His his fragileness, I guess you could say, is well documented, and I think that's true. He's only as good as the next big hit he takes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when he's on the field, as you said, they're winning football games, and they have a very talented group of receivers around him now.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Mike Gesicki, they're starting to develop a running attack. Their defense, Bradley Chubb has brought him in. So, yeah, they're looking pretty good. The one thing I don't want to see, too, become is a Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon right now, obviously, led the Bears to the 1985 Super Bowl, has lost a lot of his mental skills, and I think he's suffering from a lot of brain damage, and I've heard some things about him that I don't particularly like. Well, Mel, you played the game. Nobody's probably more equipped to comment on Tua's situation than you are. He certainly had some minimal success with the weapons that he's had, and I'm really rooting for the guy. But give me your overview on Tua.
I was kind of surprised that he came back so quickly, but they are a better football team with him at the quarterback position than they are without him. And I understand, I told you, I understand. The guy's been playing this game for a long time. It's hard to walk away from something that you love. And, obviously the guy loves it. He puts in a lot of work. There's a lot more information out there now than there was back when I was playing. The one thing I can say about Tua, he needs to learn how to fall. There's a certain way to fall that you can help yourself to prevent some of these injuries. I mean, he probably needs to put on a little weight because, they throw him around like a little rag doll. It wouldn't hurt him to put a couple bricks in his pants or something like that so he'd be a little bit heavier, a little harder to toss around the way that they toss him around. But, he's got to get rid of the football. Get rid of the football early. If it doesn't see it, don't try to make something out of nothing. Live for the next play. There's nothing wrong with throwing the ball away. That's going to help him prolong his career. Just don't always try to make that play. Sometimes there's not a play to be made. And sometimes the play to be made is the one just getting rid of the football. And that'll help him up and that'll help him out and extend his career.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go to our parting shots here where everybody has an opportunity to speak their mind on wherever the sport is. Football. All right, Carrie, lead it off.
Well, I mean, I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm a Missouri girl, but as you have probably heard in the background, and I tried to mute as much as possible, Phillies are playing in the World Series. We've got Eagles with their undefeated team. So, kind of shout out to my better half's family and longtime Philly sports fans, and pretty exciting city to be a part of. I wouldn't mind for that to be a Kansas City thing at the moment, but I digress. So my shout out is Philly's got some pretty hot stuff going on out there. That's pretty exciting to see how the fans are reacting.
Fair enough. Okay, Candy, give me your parting shot.
My parting shot is I hate to repeat it, but I think it should be said. In this being a football show, I understand, but in a day and age where we've talked a lot about the bad that's going on in sports, I want to shout out to Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are 7-0 right now. They're doing really well. Giannis, they showed pictures of him out trick-or-treating, putting on a costume and trick-or-treating with kids out in the Milwaukee area. He's what's good with the NBA. He is the role model that we can look to. And a shout out and kudos to him for being that, for being a true family man, He's the one, he wanted to start playing basketball to provide for his family, and he's doing just that. So kudos in a day and age where there's not a lot of role models to look up to. Kudos to you, Giannis. Thank you.
All right, Steve.
Well, I know you probably thought I was going to say something about the Patriots, but actually, I wanted to talk about my parting shot today about Pete Carroll. They made that trade this year, and everyone thought Seattle was going to be the bottom of the heap, that they were done. And they traded Russell Wilson to Denver. And, right now, that trade is working out swimmingly for Seattle and not so good for Denver. And the other benefactor of that trade, I think, is Geno Smith. And, we talked about earlier about you have to surround quarterbacks with better weapons. Well, Geno's never really had that. When he played with the Jets, they were pretty terrible. And now he's not only got better weapons around him, he has a really good coach around him with Pete Carroll. And he's having his best pro year. He's completing over 72, almost 73% of his passes. He's got 13 touchdowns, just 3 picks. I mean, think about that for a second. Seattle, they beat a Giants team that's been on a roll, and at the same time, Smith had a couple of drop touchdown passes in that game. So I think, when you're looking at the big picture, coaches can make or break quarterbacks, and maybe Pete had a lot to do with the success Russell Wilson had. Look what he's doing right now with Geno Smith.
Well, the only thing I'll add to that, and I think few of us are old enough to know it, once upon a time, a guy by the name of Jim Plunkett played for the New England Patriots, got a fresh start with the Raiders. How'd that work out? Won a Super Bowl or 2, right? They're pretty good. Yeah, right. I'm just kidding with you. A couple Super Bowls. So a change of scenery does work. And some of these guys that you write off, don't write them off so quick. They could work out well. And, there was no pressure on him when he went to the Raiders. And all of a sudden, when he played and he got going again, had a lot of success there. So I can certainly see your logic. I'm glad you brought up Geno Smith, Steve. I really, really am, because he's a good feel-good story in the NFL. And that's why I like to mention to Jim Plunkett. Before I turn over to Mel, congratulations on your UCLA Bruins. They're 7-1 and looking awfully good with Chip Kelly. So with that said, Mel, give me your parting shot.
Yeah, we're excited about those Bruins and what they're doing. Number 12 in the college football playoffs. So, everything's in front of them. They still got, they still have an opportunity to maybe shake some things up a little bit there. My thing, I have to think about the Lions, man. What are they doing? Obviously, they fired their defensive backfield coach this week. And I think the day before, the day after, the same day, I think it might have been the same day after they traded one of their best players. This is a guy they drafted with the 8th overall pick, took Charlie Sanders' number that was out of circulation because Charlie Sanders was a Hall of Famer. Detroit doesn't retire numbers, although they have retired number 20. And that's because Len Barney wore it, Billy Sims wore it, and Barry Sanders wore number 20. So they have retired number 20. But they normally take numbers out of circulation. So Charlie Sanders' number wasn't in circulation. They draft this kid, give him number 88, take it out of circulation, didn't ask the family or anything like that, just took the number out of circulation, gave this kid the number, and 3 years later, they're getting rid of him. Now, I've talked about this before. One of the problems with Detroit is they don't re-sign the draft picks. You just can't continue to put these young players out there and expect great results. They've been doing this for a long, long time, and it's not going to work. I mentioned it earlier. Nick Saban found out he was a better coach when he coached good players. You got to have some horses, and the Lions just don't have the horses. Who are they paying? They aren't paying anybody. They have to have the lowest payroll in the league. The only player that's probably getting paid, and that's only because they got him from the Rams, and Rams aren't paying him a whole lot of money relative to what starting quarterbacks are making in the league, is Jared Goff. And then probably the next one is probably the kid that just drafted, Hutchinson. He's probably making more money, because of his rookie contract. But, Dan Campbell has been dealt a very poor hand. It's very, very difficult to go out there and win without players. You can't even name any players on their defense, on their offense. You don't know. They don't have no household name players. How do you expect this guy to win? And then when it's time, when you do have a good player, you trade him. And not only do you trade him to somebody who you're going to have to see twice a year.
Right.
You think he's going to be motivated? You think he's going to be motivated when he comes back and plays Detroit twice a year? Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, I'll give you my parting shot really quickly. You know what? Auburn's head coaching job became vacant. There's only one guy that I'd like to see get it, Deion Sanders. I think he's earned the right for a Power 5 job, and I think this would be the appropriate one to get. So, he's done a marvelous job with Jackson State. I would definitely like to see Deion land with Auburn for sure. So we'll see what happens. All right, with that said, I'll let everybody know how they can get a hold of them. We'll start off with you, Carrie.
You can find me on Instagram. Well, not really Instagram. Twitter, Facebook. Carrie Johnson is my name. My Twitter handle is underneath my picture. I'm part of 3 Chicks in a Pod with Silent Sports, as well as Chicks and Salsa that will officially launch next week. Looking forward to meeting more people.
Candy Ebling.
Well, you can find me on 3 Chicks in a Pod when they're nice enough to invite me. I became almost the 4th chick, and that's why we decided to go with Chicks and Salsa. So we're going to debut that show on Tuesday. So please come listen to us on Sideline Sports. And you can find me sometimes here. I do Fire Up Wisconsin. We have numerous shows: Fire Up Wisconsin, Fire Up Michigan, Fire Up Florida, Fire Up Inside the Pigskins on Thursday nights, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Sports Exchange. You can find us www.southfloridatribune.com if you want to have any ideas, show ideas, comments. You can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. I'm gonna let you do the rest, Scott, but
I don't need a whole lot with me. All I'll just say is please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter at Tribune South. You did a heck of a job. I'm not going to top that act. All right, Mel Farr.
Find me on all the social media: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook at Mel Farr Jr. Follow what we have going on for the youth here in Georgia and also in Michigan at melfar.org.
Steve.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG, as well as on Instagram. Everything else is at Steve Balistreri. I write for PatsFans.com. Also write military stuff on Sandbox.com. And thanks for having me on, as always, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Steve. I enjoy having you on this show, Sports Exchange, and any other specials that we come across. And like I said, I'll reiterate on my parting shot one quick second. Deion Sanders has done an outstanding job at Jackson State and really has done some wonders there. I think he's due for an opportunity to tackle a Power 5 school. I think Auburn would be interesting. I was at Talladega and had a chance to meet Bruce Pearl and asked him a couple questions. Can you imagine Bruce Pearl and Deion Sanders being in the same athletic department? I don't know. But I think Deion Sanders is definitely worth an opportunity to see what he can do, and I think Auburn would be an interesting fit. So that concludes this edition of Inside the Pigskin. On behalf of Carrie Johnson, Candy Ebling, Steve Balistreri, Mel Farr Jr., my name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. Glad to be back. Don't have any crazy trips lined up, but you never know. And if I do, I'm king of the road, and I guarantee when Candy Ebling takes over, you'll definitely have a different look than the gray one you got here. So, well, enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next week on Inside the Pigskin. Thank you very much for joining us. Great job, crew. Proud of all of you. Thank you very much. Good night. Have a great week.
thanks, everyone.